On the agenda tonight, we're going to be having a listen to a recently produced track by Rick Beato called MidAir. Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. So we're going to be doing things a little bit differently tonight because usually I just work my way through my request list, but tonight we're going to be looking at a recent release from Rick over on his channel, and it's because somebody emailed me asking whether this track that Rick has produced has any pitch correction or auto-tune on the vocal or vocals. So, as I say in lots of other videos, when you're talking about a studio-produced track, it's almost always going to be pitch correction rather than auto-tune. Auto-tune is something that's used live, really, and you're not, unless it's just the style of somebody's music and their sound, it's not going to be applied in the studio. If you haven't seen the video, he was going to interview some session musicians in Nashville, and they decided actually just to get together and make a song. And this is exactly what they've done. And this is the song that has been produced. Now, this was a time-sensitive project, so it's not as if they've spent, days, weeks, months on this song. They just did it, to my understanding, in a day. And this is the thing about top session musicians. You tell them what to play, and they will play it. So this is really a great indication of that level of ability, but also you'll be able to listen into the production, but we'll jump into it and address the question that was asked in the first place. So we'll jump into it, and we're going to have the pitch monitoring software on screen as always. As you can see, it's called MidAir, and it's written by Daniel Tashian and Cecilia Castleman. So let's jump into it.
Up out on the town in your black tie, stars in your crown, but you're all alone in the midnight afterglow. And didn't you know when someone gets close, the wind in your hair, the cut of his clothes, you don't mean to stare. So if you're the last to know, just a feeling that you get all at once. You think twice about something stupid that you said, and out of nowhere you see the light. And every chance you take, you hope it doesn't break your heart. Now you're falling through midair. Friends tell you you move too fast, fast cars.
So I'm just going to jump in here. The great thing about this is you can appreciate the production, especially if you've got a studio setup and reference speakers, all that kind of stuff, because the kind of music that I'm into, as you can tell, classic rock, hard rock, it tends to be, even though you might not think it would be, especially in the 80s, it was really produced. I mean, sometimes overproduced. And then, when you got into the 90s, then everyone started compressing things to hell and back. But I love this kind of simple sound. And because there's the effective time constraints of just getting together and doing something in a day, it means that the production, is not just squashed and overcompressed. It's breathing. It's great. And the drums just sound great as well, because they're just not overproduced, which is something that can happen with the drums all the time. So anyway, back into, rather than talking about production, what we're going to be analysing in this particular video, which was the question whether pitch correction has been used on the vocal. Again, this is really interesting because this project that Rick has done is like a microcosm of the music industry, where you've got session musicians that come in, especially if the artist or the band, in particular cases, who might not be particularly adept at playing their instruments, they might get a session player or players in just to help out with other instruments and to fill in the sound. So given that we've just got session musicians here, if you're a record label, you want to have session musicians in the studio for as little time as possible, because time is money in the music industry. So that's why the great session musicians come in and they play what is asked of them and then they leave. And the musicians that can do that are going to be the ones that are employed the most, because they take the least amount of time to do it. So that's why, yeah, you're always going to be talking about top level players, especially in Nashville, with session musicians. But anyway, getting into the vocals, this is why it's interesting, because we've got pitch corrected vocals. And I'm sure that Rick, if he was asked about this, not that he mentions it in the video, but if he was asked about it, he would say, yes, the vocals are pitch corrected, because they're just doing this in a day. It's not as if they can go through different vocal takes and, even doing 3 or 4 or 5 takes and doing, a comp take. And that might be something that when you're working with a great singer, and you can tell that Cecilia has got one of those voices that is really accurate pitch-wise, but I'm sure she probably just did, a take or a couple of takes or maximum a few takes, and it was either a comp take and then just cleaning up, just editing the pitch ever so slightly. But we can see that on the pitch monitoring software here at the top. And I mean, this might have actually been, there's a point at which the software got a little bit stuck, and that'll be where the note has just been really stuck to 440 hertz. But I'm just going to let this play through, and we'll take down the accompaniment just so we can hear the vocal a little bit more clearly. But again, this is one of those voices where it's so easy to listen to that the application of any subtle pitch correction, this is the other thing, that this isn't like really over the top, but we will look at it in detail as we do with all analysis videos. Let's listen again.
Stars in your crown, but you're all alone in the midnight afterglow.
Okay, yeah, so that was the F4 that we got stuck to. I'm going to zoom in so we can see it a little bit more clearly, because it's a bit small on the screen. So yeah, here we go. And yeah, just in this section, yeah, we've been really stuck to 440 hertz. But when I say 440 hertz, I'm not talking, that is A. That's A4. If you've got a keyboard, that's what you'll go to. That's the note that is 440 hertz. Somebody mentioned in a previous video, oh, why do you keep referring to the notes as 440 hertz? But I'm giving you the reference point of the tuning that we are in. So then work your way, if you wanted to, work your way to all the other notes, then you can do from that reference point of knowing where we're tuning. But anyway, we are at 440 hertz tuning here. So this is the F4, and you can see that, yeah, we're quite stuck to the line there, and we'll just have a little listen through. Let's go back so we can see a bit more of it on screen.
And didn't you know, when someone gets close, the wind in your hair, the cut of his clothes, you don't mean to stare. So if you're the last to know.
And this thing, you can see at the bottom here that for the most part we are just directly over the lines here, the C3, even when we've got this tiny wobble of vibrato, and it's a really subtle vibrato in there, but you can see it. And I'm just going to have a check here, because what I've noticed is, let me have a look if this is happening again. Okay, what I've noticed with this particular analysis and this vocal, that the lines are starting to almost take on a jagged effect. Previously, with other videos that we've looked at, you still get the smooth vocal, and this just might be due to that time constraint, is that they hadn't had a lot of time to work on really smoothing out the vocal, so things are starting to look a little bit more jagged. It might just be the case that this is just a recent pitch correction. I mean, this was only just released, this song, so it stands to reason that they're using something that's going to be relatively recent in a studio in Nashville. So maybe it's the pitch correction, the way that it's now changing the pitch of the vocals. It's being a little bit more abrupt with it, even though you can't hear it. But again, we can see that, and we'll just have a listen on.
It's just a feeling that you get all at once. You think twice.
And because we've got two voices going on here, obviously the pitch monitor is just plotting little bits of both voices, just hearing the frequencies that it is taking in. I'm just going to actually zoom in on this because I wonder if we'll get this same... Actually, this is an even better example of what I was talking about. So if you remember the other analysis videos that we've looked at, you'll generally get more of a U shape here rather than a V. And we go straight up here, straight up, and we're just kind of now changing at right angles rather than changing in a smooth way. Not that you can hear this, but you can definitely see how pointed all these lines are. So yes, a really interesting thing to look at. And like I said, it might just be the fact that this is a more recent way or application of pitch correction, and now this is the way that it's just dealing with the sound in order to get it on the lines. It's something you can't hear, but we can see. We'll just move it forward to where we left it, which I think was here, and let's jump in again.
And didn't you see you took it too far? The night in your eyes, the beat of his heart. You don't mean to stay.
And just quickly on the vocal delivery from Cecilia here, you can get an appreciation of the air in her sound with the na na na. You know, it's kind of allowing that air in the sound, keeping it light, and it's just like the perfect vocal for this song, of course, because she wrote it with Daniel. But it's just sitting in that place where the instrumentation dynamically is in that same place. And that's a huge part of, again, being a great session musician, is understanding the dynamic range of where you need to be as an instrumentalist.
Guess you're the last to know.
And that kind of thing going, no. She does this thing with her voice that changes pitch very quickly. Now, there's a difference between a great vocalist changing pitch quickly and auto-tune, or maybe even pitch correction being applied incorrectly and getting that flip to another note. Especially auto-tune does that.
It's just a feeling that you get all at once.
Like there, that was. It's almost like she's going up a semitone there. Because we've got two voices here, we can't really make that out.
Twice about something stupid that you said, and out of nowhere.
Okay, I mean, that is totally on cue. I'm just going to take that back. And again, this is due to the time constraints that this has been left in. I'm going to take down the accompaniment even further. Well, just have a listen to this.
Stupid that you said.
You can hear how Cecilia's voice has been snapped to the E4, but it shouldn't have been. I'm going to play it in slow motion. Maybe you didn't hear it, but this is what happens, especially with auto-tune. It's going to take any sound that you can, any sound it can get, and it will snap it to any note of a particular scale, whatever's been programmed in. So we'll listen to this in slow motion because we're listening for this flip in the voice. That note shouldn't be there. So that's probably just the pitch correction, or maybe they've just applied a pitch correction to all of it, and it has been programmed like auto-tune because of having to do it so quickly. But we'll listen on.
And out of nowhere, you see the light.
And you can see, even though it's taking in two voices here, you'll get this kind of thing where it's just dotted on lines. So yeah, it's just been applied across this whole performance.
And every chance you take, you hope it doesn't break your heart. Now you're falling through MidAir.
And that's the kind of thing that, I mean, that is Cecilia's natural voice. And when you're analysing, going, we're a tone apart from each other there, notes-wise, rather than the semitone. When somebody's going, and they might have a wider vibrato, sometimes the top end of that vibrato can get snapped, which is something that we heard a little bit earlier on. Not that it was the vibrato that was getting snapped.
the stars are out tonight. It's a long way down, alright.
And just to point out, as you guys know, this kind of thing, again, I'm just really bringing up the same point about, I don't think it would be pitch corrected this heavily if it wasn't just, trying to get the project finished.
All the stars are out tonight. When you're falling, falling, it's just a feeling that you get. And all at once, you think twice about something stupid that you said. And out of nowhere, you see the light. And every chance you take, you hope it doesn't break your heart. Now you're falling through midair.
And there we have it. And I was smiling at his sections throughout that performance just because when you're listening to this, and if you are listening to this song, at any point do you think about the instrumentation and those musicians? And this is exactly the point of being a session musician, is that the song sounds like the song, and all we're doing really is listening to the vocals and the lyrical content, and nobody is stepping over that line of taking attention away from the song and the vocal performance and all these different things that we are allowed to focus on because of the professional ability going on behind the scenes. And it's a really subtle thing, but it just makes all the difference to any song ever. So the reason that this is an interesting video to look at is because when I say about it being a microcosm of the industry, nowadays, this is what's being done, but all the time. So even when record labels might have the money to spend a lot of time on a song and, nail the vocals and nail everything about the song, they'll just try to do it as quickly as possible. And I think this is the reason why, it's going to make more money for less time in the studio, especially when you're talking about vocals. The record labels will want a particular sound, but more importantly, they'll want a sound that can be produced quickly. So if you say to a record label, right, we can do all of the vocals for the album in one day, and we'll just pitch correct it all, or we can spend a week on it and have it all natural and produce it that way. Of course, the record label will say, well, we're not worried about, the art or getting it to sound human or, expressive or really any of the artistic integrity. The record label aren't worried about that. The artist might be worried about it, but they don't really get a say in it. So they will always go with the first option. Do it in a day because, we're then going to have 6 days in the studio where we can do 6 other albums and just do the same thing. So, yeah, as you can imagine, that's just the way the industry works. It is an industry. They are there to make as much money as possible. They're not there to make the best art. Anyway, thank you guys for requesting this particular video for me to take a look at. It is a very recent one, but a really interesting one to look at for all of the reasons that I've just mentioned. Keep those suggestions and requests coming in the comment section below. If you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. As always, let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you guys at the next one. Rock!